Hello, you guys. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the time in your country. I just hope you're having a great time. And today we're going to be talking about a very special topic, and this is more aimed at teachers, basically. So this conversation is going to be about how to deal with difficult students. I'm going to be talking about this topic with a friend of mine, which is Paul. He's a very good English teacher. He's been teaching English for a long time. And we're basically going to have a conversation about this topic right now. He's entering right now in the room, so let's talk to him. All right, Paul, so thank you very much for accepting my invitation to have a conversation about difficult students. I think that sometimes dealing with a difficult student is pretty difficult for us as well. Forgive the redundancy. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about difficult students. Sometimes you have business students. In your case, you told me that you have been more focused on business classes, like adults and students who are grown-ups instead of teenagers and kids, which is my case. In my case, I have been teaching kids and teenagers for a long time. But your case is different. So I want you to take a look at this picture, Paul. And tell me if you have ever had a chance to, deal with a student like this? Like you go to the student's office, you try to talk to the student and the student simply does not pay attention to you because maybe you're not that important, or he's just being forced to take the classes with you. Tell me, have you ever experienced this situation?
Yes, so good morning, Frank. First of all, thank you for sharing this short time to have this conversation. And it's quite interesting, because we as teachers have to face different challenges whenever we have new students or whenever we have to teach or deal with different groups. So as you were asking me if I have ever had an experience about dealing with these kind of students, then the answer is a huge yes. Of course, I've had the chance, and not only I think not only in case of kids or children, but in case of young adults and adults as well, you will find laid-back students. But the key for me, and the key that the thing that I always suggest and recommend teachers and also myself is you have to go beyond the situation you're seeing. So if I get to see a student like that in a classroom, the first thing that I will do is trying to get to know the student a little more and trying to understand what his or her motivation is. For studying English, there must be a reason why the student is in my classroom wanting to study English. So that's the number one thing that I will need to understand. What is the student motivation? Number two is get to know the student a little bit more. Like, what are his hobbies? What is his occupation? What about his family, environment? Just to know a little bit more about the student. So once I know the student's interest, student's motivation and all that, then I will create a bond with the student and get closer with students. So if I get to do that, then of course the connection with the student will be a lot better, and I will make sure that the student is engaged and more connected with me and with the class itself. So it's a challenge, Frank. Those are the kind of students that I like the most, because it represents a challenge for me as a teacher to say, that is my challenge. I'm going to try my best to get the students interested in my class and the topic that I'm teaching, and get something that is good for the student, that is beneficial for the student.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
That's basically what I think.
Cool. I really like your point of view, because I think that these kind of students are really difficult. In your case, you like them, but in my case, of course, I like them as well. But what I don't like is the effort that I have to make in order to be able to create a special class for these students. So sometimes this is a little bit more difficult for teachers than a normal student, like an easygoing student. So this is what I want to keep talking about. And I have a couple of questions for you, Paul. And
Sure.
Tell me, can you see my screen? Can you see my Word document?
Yes, I can.
Yes. All right, so the first question that I have for you, Paul, is this one right here. Look, do you think using proximity to limit negative actions is a good strategy to deal with a student who's not so engaged with the class? What do you think about this?
Okay, that's a very good question, Frank. And making sure or making the students feel that you're close, it's always essential for me as a teacher. And the thing that we should always try to avoid is sometimes there is this barrier between the teacher and the student. And that should not happen, because then the student will see you as the teacher. I mean, the person who they can never approach, or the teacher who's never willing to approach the student to help them. So we should do the opposite. We should create an image that the students should be able to come to you whenever they have doubts, whenever they don't understand. So that's why proximity, that's why the teacher being able to be approachable with the student is essential. By doing that, you destroy this barrier between you as a teacher and the student. And this proximity would allow you to, number one, get to know your student. Number two, understand what their needs are. So if you know your student and you understand what their needs are, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to know how you can help your students and what is more productive, what is more beneficial for your students. So that's why I believe that being approached to your students and proximity, it's essential. Now, there is another point of view, basically, when you're in the class itself and the students are getting distracted and they're not paying attention to you, they're not engaged in the class, and the teacher is close to the board, like pretty much what I am right now, my students are there. So getting closer to the students physically and talking to them and saying like, hey, maybe patting a little bit the desk and you know, like make him feel your presence is there, that would definitely wake up students, and it will be like, pay attention, you know? And you don't need to do something like, hey, pay attention. You don't need to do that. So only by walking by, getting closer to the students who are not paying attention would definitely call their attention back and say like, okay, the teacher is here, you know? So that's what I believe, that proximity is important in that case.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think that sometimes students, when they are not engaged with the class, with the teacher, you have to try to get a little bit closer to the student in terms of maybe interaction, like talking to the student in a friendlier way, so that the student feels that you, as a matter of fact, you care about the student, you care about the personal interest of this person. And in this case, I'm sharing with you this picture. This is a pretty interesting picture, because I have had students who are using their cell phones, they are chatting, they are WhatsApping a friend, they're just trying to do whatever they want instead of just paying attention to the class. And in this case, what you're talking about is really good, like getting closer to the student, trying to talk to the student in a friendlier way so that he or she feels more engaged with you as a teacher, right? So this leads me to the next question, Paul. And the next question that I want to talk about today is this one right here. You can see it, right?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Okay, so you told me something really important that I would like to pinpoint, and it was the fact that sometimes students are not so engaged because of the time. Maybe they feel lazy, or maybe they're just sleepy because the class is due early. But what do you think about this? Do you think that is the class time important when it comes to discipline? Do you think that maybe starting at a certain time in the morning or starting the class at a certain time in the evening, do you think this influences the students' process of learning?
Okay, before I get into that question, dear friend, I would like to make some comments on what the previous picture you showed and the comments you said about students using cell phones. And I mean, it's the same case with adults. Let me share with you a little bit of experience that I've had with some businessmen in offices. Sometimes when you're trying to teach them and you're in his or her office, so they will get distracted by using their cell phone from time to time. I got an email, I got this call or something like that. So you as a teacher will have to in some way wait until they finish so you can continue with the class. So one time it's okay in a class time period, but if it becomes repetitive, then it becomes like an obstacle for the class to flow. So in that case, I have always believed that setting rules from the very beginning of the class with your students, it's important, but those rules should be worked out together. You as a teacher with your students or with your student, doesn't matter if they're kids or adults, rules should be always present, and so it should, both parts should come to an agreement and build these rules, create these rules. So with all those rules clear, then the class can flow. And from time to time, you should remind the students of those rules and say, look, cell phone is not allowed. Maybe one time, maybe if it's extremely important. But besides that, it's not because, and of course there is a reason why you guys have agreed on these rules, So that is the number one thing that we should keep in mind. Setting rules along with the students or the student is really important. Now, coming to the question, can you show it to me please again?
Yes, here it is. You can see it, right?
Okay. That's a difficult question, my dear friend, because I believe that everything goes around knowing your student a little more. So if you were my private student, the number one thing that I would ask you is, what is your routine? Like, what is the time that you're available to have your classes? So if you're available to have classes in the morning or in the afternoon or at night, and the big question would be why? If you're able to take classes in the afternoon, it's because are you busy in the morning, or because you want to sleep more in the morning and you want to have them classes in the afternoon? What's the reason you want to have your classes at a certain particular time? So that's the thing that I would know. I would like to know first. What are your activities during the day? Because it's not the same having classes early in the morning than in the afternoon or at night. Definitely, it is going to affect, number one, your concentration, and of course, your performance in the class. You won't be at 100% active at 10 p.m. Let's say that a student comes and tells me, Paul, I want to have classes at 10 p.m. because I'm busy throughout all the day and I'm just available to have the classes at 10. So that would be like, are you sure you want to have the classes at 10? Because you won't be like fully aware or concentrated at that time. So I believe that maybe early in the morning, it would be a lot better for some students to have the classes because your brain is kind of more, is fresh, you can be more concentrated, the assimilation of everything that you're learning is going to be more effective, the assimilation process. So personally speaking, I believe that mornings are way better to study than late in the evenings or at nights. But if the student has no other option because of their activities they have to do in the mornings or in the afternoon because of work or because of they study at university or other things, we have to find the way to help the student to make the class dynamic, very interactive, in order for the student to be able to pay attention and participate. In that case, participation and interaction is the key to get the student attention when, of course, they can be a little tired after a long day.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And I'm sharing with you this picture. This is about a sleepy student. And a lot of students, they always tell me, like, teacher, I don't like to have classes in the morning because I would be sleepy and I prefer to be like ready and active for the class in the afternoon or maybe in the evening. And I always agree with you, and I always tell them like, okay, I'd rather have a student who's sleepy in the class, but I would try to motivate the student and try to make the student feel more comfortable, more energetic, more willing to participate in the class because I am the teacher, so I have the control of the class. Than having a student in the afternoon, in the evening, so they are not so engaged. It's not like a very good time. They might be tired already because they already worked during the day. They had a pretty tough day maybe. So that's why I also prefer classes in the morning. This is the very first time of the day, and you can actually make sure that the student has a good time and that you have a dynamic class with the student. And I totally agree with you, Paul. I think that this is the best time for a student to have classes in the morning, as early as possible. And you know what they say, right? That the early bird catches the worm. So I think that it's definitely like that. All right, Paul.
Yes.
Now. Okay.
I totally agree there, Frank. And we know that every single student is different. So every single student has a different reality, they learn in a different way. So that's why, and again, we have to know our students. We have to know students before we design a plan, before we actually plan a class for him or for her. And maybe I can be more active in the afternoon. If that is the case, and I can prove it in a class, then go ahead and have the classes in the afternoon. And finally, Frank, what you say is right. Most of it depends on us as educators, as teachers in this case. We need to know how to plan our lessons to make it interactive, to make it entertaining, so the students are fully engaged in all the class. That depends on us as teachers.
Yes, definitely. And have you ever had a student who was so difficult that maybe the student wanted to have the class at the time, and maybe you didn't agree with this time because it was too late, but at the end of the day you decided to go for it because at the end of the day the students' needs are more important because we need to help them. We are helpers. So have you ever had this chance for this scenario in which a student tells you a pretty difficult time, but you end up accepting and doing it just for the student's sake?
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, I remember one case of a student that he wanted to get preparation for TOEFL examination, and we were having classes from 9:30 to 11, like 3 times a week. And it was at the beginning it was very complicated because first of all, I was tired as well because it was very late. I was teaching in the morning, I was teaching in the afternoon, and I had to go to his house to actually have this last class. And on top of that, it was TOEFL preparation. So it was a heavy topic. It was not only a regular English class, but a full preparation of writing techniques and reading techniques, plus the listening, which are very long, and you have a lot of vocabulary to teach. So it was quite complex, very complex. So in the end, after some classes, of course, because the first thing I needed to see it was the students' performance in the first classes. So I saw that it was not possible for him to deal with all the content of the preparation at that time. So we came to an agreement, and we decided to have only two classes during the weekdays from 9:30 to 11, but one class on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning was a lot better for him to do some writing preparation and reading preparation, which demand a lot of more concentration and a lot of more time, you know? So what I did was to plan carefully which activities and which skills needed to be studied and were better to study during nighttime, and which activities were better to be studied during morning time on Saturdays. So that's basically what I need to separate and analyze which is better. And well, once the decision was agreed, then we start working on that, and it was his performance was a lot better in that case when we came to that agreement. So it happened. So one important thing, Frank, before I finish that question, is we as teachers need to suggest, because sometimes the students as clients, they come to you with a proposal. They come to you saying, oh, teacher, I want to have classes every day, 4 hours in a row. That's what they want. That's what they want to pay for. But we have to suggest as teachers what is more recommendable for them in terms of their performance, in terms of their goals. So in order to reach your goal, what I suggest as a teacher is this, that maybe 4 hours in a row, it would be too much. Maybe you won't be able to deal with 4 hours in a row. That's not academically beneficial in that case. So that's why we need to keep in mind that we are teachers. We have to give our opinion, our suggestions for the students to better take advantage of all our classes. You know?
Exactly, and there is something really important about this, and it's the attention span. A lot of students are not concerned about this topic. A lot of students don't know that the average attention span of an average human being, forgive the redundancy, is just 45 minutes. So more than 45 minutes in a row would be counterproductive for the student and the teacher as well, because both of us are going to be, we're going to have troubles with the classes because of the attention span.
Sure.
It's not healthy to teach someone for so long in a row. You always need a break. If you have breaks, for example, in my case, when I have an hour and a half class, I always try to do a pause in the middle, like a break time. I always try to talk about something funny. I always try to talk whatever the student is doing, in order to let go of the burden of having to deal with a complete hour and a half class, which is sometimes a little bit tedious. All right.
Yes, what you say is it's important. You know, it's not a matter of complying with an hour and a half class and have to cover all this content and we have to go over all these units. It's a matter of helping the student to actually progress within the class.
Yes,
you know?
Definitely.
And as you were mentioning, having this break, it is a great idea to make a stop in the lesson and have a random conversation, of course in English, but a random fun conversation. So the student will say like, oh, I'm having a break, let's gonna talk about something different.
Yeah.
And after those 5 minutes conversation break, let's call it, then you can go back to the topic and continue with the class.
Yes, definitely. And you can take advantage of the break time to show some empathy with the student. And this is the next question, which is I think number 3. Let's see. Yes, number 3. So this is the question that I want to ask you now, Paul, and it is, okay, regarding empathy, what are your thoughts when it comes to talking about topics that might be of students' interest? You can see it, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so what do you think about this topic? A lot of students, a lot of teachers I have heard, they are not so sympathetic, they're not so empathic with the student. And I think that this part is really important when it comes to teaching, when it comes to having a relationship, and any interpersonal relationship, you always need to put yourself in the student's shoes or the other person's shoes. So what do you think about this topic?
Okay. In order to be, attracted to actually make a good connection, there should always be a reason to feel this, to create this attraction. If there is no reason why, then the attraction won't happen. So let me give you an example. When we were talking yesterday and you gave me a proposal saying, Paul, let's gonna have this conversation today. And it's going to be about English and about these difficult students and all that. I felt so interested because I like the topic, because I'm an English teacher myself and I feel passionate about this topic. So that's why my answer was yes. But if maybe the topic would have been like, Paul, let's gonna talk about soccer, then probably my answer would have been like, I don't know. Let me think about it, and I give you
I'd
an
rather
answer.
pass on this one.
It's because I'm not interested in soccer. So taking that example to a class, it is essential to make our topics relevant for our student, meaningful for us. So in order to make a topic meaningful, we have to know and we have to understand what our students' interests are. So if I know that one of my students is a big fan of cooking, for example, or is a bartender, or maybe one of my students is fan of music or something like that, I have to take advantage of that in order to bring that topic into the class, use it in order to create dynamism, in order to create conversation, in order to get his or her attention. That is the best way to do it. So you don't get students' attention by saying, "Hey, pay attention to me." That is not the way how you get attention. The best way to get your students' attention is, of course, by proposing topics or using topics that are really meaningful to all of them. So
Definitely. Yes. I totally agree with you, Paul. And for example, my case, I want to talk about it as something I always like to do is once I get to know the students' interest a bit more, I always try to put the activities or maybe to use the things that the students have told me that they like, and I try to use it in the class. Like for example, if the class is about simple present, and I know that some students like, I don't know, soccer, I try to use examples with soccer and stuff like that, and students end up loving the classes and feeling really good about it. And at the end of the class, they say like, "Teacher, is the class over?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the class is over." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize." And it's just because
that's the best. That's the best thing you can hear when the class is finished. Also, when they look at the time, it's like, "Oh, is it over?" So it makes you feel like, "Wow, I did a good job."
yes, and that is very rewarding as a teacher. I think that the most rewarding thing when it comes to teaching is listening to the students' satisfaction, like the students satisfied. So this is really, really important. And the next question is sometimes when you have a difficult student, Paul, in my case, sometimes I try to talk to people who dealt with the student before. So in your case, what do you think about it? Do you think this is a good technique? I personally think it is a good technique, but some people disagree because some people think that if they have difficult student, they should not talk to different people who talked to the student before or taught the student before. They should simply try to find their own way to deal with this person. But in your case, tell me, would you talk with former teachers who have had the chance to teach the difficult student so as to listen to whether their techniques work out or not?
Um, my answer would be yes, yes, because what I think is having a little feedback, understanding of what the student or the group's background was. It's important. It's important for me to understand, to see the full picture of the student and of the group, and be able to know what tools I can complement it with, so I can make a more effective class for these particular students, these difficult students. So in my case, I would ask the former teacher to give me a little feedback, not to judge. Of course, we cannot judge our students and get into the class saying, like, "Oh, you're the difficult student," so you kind of feel like there. No, not to make the student feel like you're ready to whatever is coming, but to make the student feel that, okay, I know you a little more. That's what I say. Get to know your student. That is also a technique or a way to get to know your student, getting a little feedback from their previous teachers, from the previous classes. So when you have, the more information you will have about the student's progress, about the group's progress, I'm sorry. So then you will have more tools to better prepare your class, to actually create more effective tools to help them. So I'll be in a better position to help them, and of course I will choose that option for sure.
Yes, and it's easier. I think that it's a kind of shortcut, isn't it? Like if you talk to a former teacher, And then this person tells you, well, I taught this student like for a year, maybe 4 or 5 months. And at the end of the day, I realized that this is what he or she likes. So this is a technique. This is a pretty quick shortcut to get to know how the student better.
Yes, and teachers, we will always remember our difficult students, always. So if the name comes to your mind and say, oh, do you remember the student? Then the answer will be saying, yes, and a list of comments. And we need to keep in mind that those comments should be constructive. Yeah. Everything should be constructive. Everything should be like, oh, this is what I have observed in the student's progress. This is what should be improved. So you that are a new teacher, this is your challenge. So then you will understand what your challenge is with this particular difficult student.
Yes, and a lot of times this feedback that you receive from previous teachers, it's basically the same. It's always the same. Like, well, you have to be dynamic. It's like you have to try to interact with the student to make him feel or to make her feel good in the class through dynamism. So this is the next question, Paul. And the next question is related to this topic that I just talked about before. And it is it an option to make the class as dynamic as possible, meaning to let go of most of grammatical topics? What do you think?
That's an excellent question. I like it because I'm not sure if every, but a lot of students we have in their minds that grammar equals boring,
Yeah, boring.
Grammar equals heavy things, and I don't want to, even for some teachers, I've heard some comments coming from some teachers saying like, I don't like teaching grammar because it's very boring and it's tiring. But look, my thing is, it's not about the topic itself. It's not about getting rid of grammar topics in class. No. It's quite the opposite. It's about finding out new ways to incorporate this teaching grammar, but in a communicative way, in a fun way. Then of course you can, I always incorporate grammar in my classes, but of course, never with just the book and say, okay, hello students, open page number 27 and we're gonna see present simple tense and point one. Not in that way, that's pretty old fashioned, so we're not doing that. Even in a conversation, I can be correcting grammar. I can be giving you grammar inputs in a conversation. So grammar is always and should be always present in the class, but in a communicative approach. It should always be, in that sense. Otherwise, of course, if it's in the old-fashioned way, then students will get bored, students will definitely lose their interest in English, and there would be even more students saying, I don't like language, I don't like English because it's pretty boring, there are a lot of grammar rules that we have to memorize, and it's not about that. So if you do that, in the end, you will have the students who are maybe good at grammar whenever they receive an exam. But if they're exposed to a conversation in English, they won't be able to use the language because they haven't been exposed to the real use of the language. So that's why keep in mind that grammar should be always present in class in a communicative way. They should understand not only the structure of the grammar, but how to use it and when to use it in a meaningful context. That is pretty much my perspective. How to use the grammar, when to use it, everything around a meaningful context for me. So if I understand that, if the teacher is able to present that to me, then I will understand, oh, that is the reason why I have to learn how to use present perfect tense. Because a lot of students know how to use it in a paper, how to actually write it in terms of grammar rules. But whenever they are speaking, they almost never use present perfect tense because they don't understand when to use it. They have never been taught like how to use it or in which precise time they have to use it. So if they get to understand that, then of course they will say like, oh, now I understand why that topic, that tense, it's important in my speaking. So I think grammar is important, my friend, and
Yeah.
but it's on us to figure it out in which way we're going to present our grammar points, our grammar
Mhm.
points.
Yes, and it's totally good. What you're talking about is super interesting, Paul, because some people think that teaching grammar has to be tedious, boring, and it's not like that. It should not be like that. So we have to do some proceduralizing, which is a technique that consists on actually teaching the student and teaching the student how to talk about grammar. Sorry, how to use different structures regarding grammar, and after that, using these topics, this lesson in a real life environment, in a real life conversation, something that is more communicative, as you said before. Like, for example, you can simply have a conversation about football, soccer, movies, using the topics in grammar that you previously taught. So this is a very good way to teach grammar, to use the real life context and the communicative way that you were talking about before. But sometimes, Paul, you know that we as teachers feel like giving up, right? Have you ever had this sensation that sometimes maybe you had a student who didn't like grammar, even though, I mean, despite everything you did, I mean, even though you were dynamic, you try to talk about something that he liked, you try to be, sympathetic with the student. At the end of the day, the student simply tells you, you know what, I don't like you, I don't like English, I don't want to study. So have you ever felt like this? Because I have a confession to make here. I have felt like giving up sometimes with certain students. That sometimes the student really tells me like, I don't like English, I don't like you. So why are we here? But in your case, Paul, this is the next question. After all, everything that you have talked about, and after having applied all the techniques that we have been breaking down throughout the class, the conversation, sorry. Tell me, have you ever felt like giving up on a difficult student?
I honestly have to confess that yes, I have sometimes during my career, and as you were saying before, it's because sometimes you just try so many different ways, and you even, I mean, try to explore some new ways to get closer to the student or to get student engaged or more productive, and in the end it's like you don't get to see the results that you expect to see. So yes, I have felt that way sometimes before, and it's really interesting in that way because it makes me feel like, okay, I have to make a stop and I have to think and really and deeply analyze what happened in that student situation. Of course, it's not like it doesn't. I mean, even though I felt that way, it doesn't mean that I gave up on student. I never gave up on student in that way. So I tried until the very end, and I tried all the tools necessary to help the students. So, but it actually encouraged me to sit and analyze and say, am I doing something wrong, or should I do something different in order to make the student more, I mean, make all this learning process more effective for that particular student? So I need to understand some questions. I need to actually do a analysis and trying to answer all these questions. And if after all this analysis in the end, I will get to a conclusion and say, all the tools were there, all the environment was there, but the student in the end was the one who was not willing to do because of his own decision. And in that case, I will try to talk to the student and understand why his decision was not, if he, like I was telling you at the very beginning of this conversation, if the student is in my class, it's because of a reason. So I will try to go over and return to that point and say, what was that reason that actually brought you to my class? What was the reason that you decided to study English? So try to connect with the student and going back to the initial goals. And if the student is willing to go back to the goals and say like, oh yes, I need English because of this, then probably I would encourage the student and say, okay, now change your willingness a little bit more and let's gonna try things better. And so that's why, in that case, analysis of the situation and questioning things that you are doing as a teacher as well, and the communication with your student is essential to fully understand what is happening, you know? So it's not an easy job, of course. It's not an easy task to do. It's quite complex, but that is part of our job as teachers.
Yes, in spite of the fact that sometimes students are difficult, that students are not so willing to have a class with you, you always have to find a way to make yourself be liked and loved by the students, because that's our purpose. Our purpose is to teach, to help people. So if we give up whenever we face a difficult situation, then we're doing nothing. We're just
No, no, because we cannot give up. Come on, Frank, we cannot give up because it's the same case. It's the same case for students, because we don't want the students to give up when they actually get to find any challenging or difficult situation in their English learning process. We always encourage our students to say, come on, you can do it. You can study more. You can practice more. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you that. We want our students not to give up. So, of course, we cannot give up on our students. Otherwise, the whole purpose is lost.
Of course, yeah. And that's what I wanted to say. That you can never give up on the students. You can never, actually, you can never show this emotion to the student. You can never actually let the student figure it out by himself or herself. Like, oh my gosh, the student the teacher's having a bad time with me. The teacher's feeling bad, or the teacher's feeling stressed out or nervous. So I think that all in all, I think that we as teachers are some kind of actors sometimes, because I don't know if it happened to you before, but in my case, sometimes I step in the classroom and I realize that I had a pretty bad day, that I have a lot of burdens in my shoulders, I have a lot of things to do, and I'm pretty stressed out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you just want to, go home and sleep a little bit. But I just, I try to change my attitude. I try to change my attitude towards the student, and I try to be more optimistic, more dynamic. And that's why the students always tell me, teacher, aren't you tired about being happy all the time? And I'm like, no. I'm always happy, and from their perspective, I'm always happy. I'm always having a good time. But it's just like a show. It's like we're trying to entertain the student, to teach the student, and to have them feel a good time with us. So that's the conversation, Paul. Thank you very much for accepting my call. I'm gonna pay you later. It's $2,000, right?
Yes, we'll share our bank account. So, right. Frank,
okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this time. And I'm gonna finish this conversation by saying that, I mean, teaching, it's a lovely profession. I really love teaching, and the reason, as you were mentioning before, the reason why we have become teachers is because we want to share what we know, and we want to help other people achieve their goals. That is our mission, and we should always keep that in mind. We should always keep what our mission is. Never give up, always keep on trying. And when I say trying, I mean getting ourselves more prepared, actually finding new techniques, finding new ways, being able to be more prepared for our students, to help our students. That is also important. It's not only about the willingness to do the things, but also the preparation that we have as professionals to know better tools and understand what are the better new ways to help our students achieve their goals in terms of learning process. And finally, get to know our students. We have to get to know our students to understand how they can be helped and what are their needs. That is very essential in all this learning process. Thank you very much, Frank. I appreciate and love our time talking, and have a great day.
You too, Paul. Have a very good day, and remain teaching, which is your passion. And I know that everybody that you taught before and you're going to teach in future, they're going to enjoy the time they have with you, because you're such a passionate teacher. So this is something that I really like about you, Paul. So congratulations.
Congratulations to you too, and thank you very much. Have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.